Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Arif Hasmi bin Azhar. My matrix number is G23A0253. I will present about introduction. So, for this study, we analyze a dataset containing information on 1,338 individuals and their annual life insurance premiums. Statistical data analysis is a process of collecting, organizing, and summarizing and interpreting data to obtain useful information. It helps business and researchers identify patterns, trends, and relationships, allowing decisions to be made based on evidence rather than assumption. There are two main types of statistical analysis used in this study. The first one is descriptive statistic, which summarize and describe the characteristic of the data. The second one is inferential statistic, which used to draw the conclusion and test whether certain factors have a significant effect on insurance charges. The dataset includes variables such as age, gender, BMI, number of children, smoking, status, region, and annual insurance charges. The main objective of this study is to investigate the factors that may influence insurance charges.
So for sampling and data selection, to decide our sample size, we use matrix number of our group members. We took the last two digits from each matrix number: 24, 25, 35, and 53 and 83. Um, from this value, we calculated the sample size and population frame. For example, one calculation gives us 476 cases to be selected, and another gave us 583 cases to be considered. So finally, we use SPSS random selection to pick the cases which reduce bias and make the sample representative. Assalamualaikum. Hi, my name is Nuri Izazi binti Muhammad Taji, and my matrix number is A23A1625. So before we go to the descriptive statistic, what is a descriptive statistic? So it is numbers and charts that summarize data. Instead of looking at hundreds of rows, we use descriptive statistic to show the average, middle, most common values, and how spread out the data is. So for this part, I will explain about the numerical descriptive measure. For the first one is measure of central tendency. For age, the average is about 40 years and the median is also 40. This shows that the age are quite balanced, though the common age is 19. For BMI, the average is 31, which is an overweight range. The median is close at 30.5 and the most frequent BMI is 33. For children, respondents have about one child on average. The median is 1, but the common case is families with no children. For charges, the average is 12,800 ringgit, but the median is lower than 9,000. This means some very high charge are pulling the average up. The most frequent charge is 1,137 ringgit, showing that smaller charges are more common. For the next part is measure of variation. For age, the spread is quite wide, about 46 years difference between youngest and oldest. This shows our sample is diverse. For BMI, the variation is moderate. Most people are close to the average, but there are some outliers at both ends. For children, the range is from 0 to 5. The small standard deviation means most families are small. For charges, the variation is large. The range is about 57,000 ringgit and the standard deviation is very high, showing big difference in cost among respondents. So for this descriptive statistic, part, which is the graphical presentation. This slide shows the distribution of respondents by gender, region, and smoking status. For gender, the sample is fairly balanced, about 55% male and 45% female. For region, all four areas are represented quite evenly, but the Southeast has the largest share at 28.6%, while the Southwest is the smallest at 22.8%. For smoking status, the majority are non-smokers at Ec- non-smokers 82.9%, with only smokers which is 17.1%. So overall, this chart show that our data set is diverse in gender, region, and most respondents are non-smokers.
Assalamualaikum Doctor. My name is Nur Afika binti Zamairi and my metric number is 8231924. So in this section, we use hypothesis testing to analyze our sample data. Our main objective here is to find out if smoking status has a significant effect on annual medical insurance charges. If you look at table 4.1, Group statistic. Our data set includes 387 non-smokers and 89 smokers. From this descriptive data, we can see a very huge difference in the average cost. On average, smokers pay a much higher insurance charge, which is 31,791 ringgit and 36 cents per year. On the other hand, non-smokers only pay an average of 8,657 ringgit and 25 cents per year. Because of this difference is very large, it shows that we need to analyze these two variables further. To see if this difference is truly significant, we will use the independent sample t-test, which will be explained in detail by my group member next.
Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. My name is Nurul Iman Nabilah binti Muhammad Izam. My metric number is A23A1983. I will explain about independent sample t-test. An independent sample t-test is a statistical method used to compare the mean values of two independent groups. The purpose of this test is to determine whether the observed difference between the group is statistically significant or occurred by chance. In this study, the independent sample t-test was used to compare annual insurance charge between smoker and non-smoker. The null hypothesis states that there is no significant difference in annual insurance charge between smoker and non-smoker, while the alternative hypothesis states that there is a significant difference between the two groups. Based on the independent sample t-test, the significant value of Levine test is less than 0.001. Since the value is lower than 0.05, the lower assumption of equal variance is violated. Therefore, the equal variance not assumed rule was used for interpretation. The t-test result shows a t-value of negative 17.624 and a p-value of less than 0.001. Since the p-value is lower than the significant level of 0.05, the null hypothesis is rejected. This indicates that there is a statistically significant difference in annual insurance charge between smoker and non-smokers. In conclusion, smoking status has a significant influence on annual insurance charge, as smokers and non-smokers have significantly different insurance costs. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Izzah Atikah binti Zamzuri. My metric number is A23B1435. So my part is to present the analysis of variance, which is ANOVA. So ANOVA is a statistical method used to compare the average value of three or more groups. The main purpose of ANOVA is to determine whether the difference between the group means are statistically significant or whether they are occur by chance. In our analysis, the dependent variable is medical charge while the independent variable is region. So the regions included in this study are Northeast, Northwest, Southeast and Southwest. So we selected ANOVA because there are 4 groups and ANOVA is the most suitable test for comparing the means of more than 2 groups at the same time. The hypotheses for this test are: first, null hypothesis (HOR). There is no significant difference in the mean medical charge among the 4 regions. Second, alternative hypothesis H1. At least one region has a different mean medical charge. The significant level used in this analysis is 0.05, which means we will reject the null hypothesis only if the p-value is less than 0.05. Next, let's look at the descriptive statistic. The table shows that the Northeast region has the highest average medical charge with a mean of 4,095.04. The Southeast region follows with a mean of 13,822.10, while the Northwest region has a mean of 12,657.34. The Southwest region has the lowest average medical charge with a mean of 12,073.08. Although these average values are different, we cannot conclude that the difference are statistically significant by looking at the means alone. Therefore, we perform a one-way ANOVA test. So the ANOVA results show an F value of 0.749 and a p-value or significant value of 0.523. So now I will explain the components in the ANOVA table. So first is sum of squares measure the amount of variation in the data. The between group sum of square measure the variation caused by difference between the 4 regional means. The within group sums of square measure the variation among individuals within the same region. Next is the degrees of freedom or DF. For the between groups, the degree of freedom is 3 because there are 4 regions and the formula is number of group minus 1. For the within groups, the degree of freedom is 472, which is calculated from the total sample size minus the number of groups. The mean square is calculated by dividing the sum of square by its corresponding degrees of freedom. The F value, which is 0.749, compares the variation between the group with the variation within the groups. Finally, the p-value or significant value is 0.523. The p-value helps us decide whether the difference between the group means are statistically significant. So since 0.523 is greater than 0.05, the result is not statistically significant. Based on the ANOVA result, the p-value of 0.523 is greater than the significance level of 0.05. Therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. This means that there is not enough statistical evidence to conclude that the average medical charge differ among the Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, and Southwest regions. In conclusion, the region does not have a significant effect on medical charge in this sample. Although the average charge varies slightly from one region to another, these differences are not large enough to be considered statistically significant. Thank you.
To conclude, this study used statistical method to identify factors that influence annual insurance charges. A random sample was selected to ensure the analysis was fair and representative. Descriptive statistics were used to summarize the characteristics of the respondent and provide the overview of the data. The inferential analysis show that smoking status has significant effect on insurance charges, with smoker paying much higher charge compared to a non-smoker. However, the ANOVA result indicate that there is no significant difference in insurance that charges or across the four regions. This means that a person's region does not have a major influence on the amount they pay for insurance. Overall, the findings suggest that lifestyle factors, especially smoking habit, are more important in determining insurance charges than geographical location. Thank you.